Welcome. You're now listening to episode 106 from the Shed End, a very cold Friday morning or Friday afternoon. It's 12 p.m. as we're recording. Theo, how you doing?
Cold, really, really cold. I've got a cardboard box under my desk so my feet don't touch the ground. It's that cold. But yeah, I think it was hovering just below 0 degrees this morning in London. But I'm off to Spain this weekend to run a marathon. It'll be a lot warmer there at least. But then not looking forward to coming back to cold London on Tuesday afternoon. Yeah. But yeah, it's been a busy week with work, getting to that festive period of things. So yeah, looking forward now to that little break we'll get over the Christmas period. How are you doing?
I'm not bad. Like yourself. I think I can beat your just below 0. It was definitely -6 this morning on the school run. So, and it's not getting any warmer. It's so strange because the sun is out, it's beaming, it's lovely. It was like this yesterday. It was so sunny, but as you step out, it's a false sense of security. So, don't expect the sun to warm you up if you're out and about this weekend. Yeah, I'm good. Apart from that, watched some decent football this week. Obviously not Chelsea. But yeah, some good football matches and like you, looking forward to the weekend, looking forward to the Christmas period as well, getting the Christmas tree up, which we still haven't done in my house yet. So I'm sure we'll do that this weekend. But your marathon as well, little plug. When is it? Where is it? Is it Valencia?
It's in Valencia in Spain. So yeah, Saturday, maybe if I get the time, I'll do a tour of the Mestalla Stadium. Yeah. I've actually been there before for Valencia against Chelsea. But yeah, if you can go behind the scenes, see the changing rooms, the players' tunnel, the dugout. It's quite a historic stadium in Spain. And then the marathon itself is on Sunday morning. I've given up alcohol. I've been eating all healthy for the last month or so. So I'll really indulge afterwards. Yeah, during the Christmas period and Christmas party the following Wednesday. So I'll make the most out of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Now, as always on this podcast, I like to bring the mood down. We've just been speaking about the Valencia marathon that Theo's running, but we are going to take it back to last weekend. Newcastle 4, Chelsea 1. Very, very, I gave my thoughts, I think, on the Monday after the game, and just tried to let out what I needed to let out in terms of the game itself. But just in terms of the performance for you, how do you feel that it went for us? The game fizzled out so quickly for us, in my opinion. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I had to listen to your post-match review and I thought you were spot on. You were rightfully so to be angry and frustrated, because for me, all 4 goals were avoidable. And Newcastle were there for the taking before kickoff. We saw they had a weakened team. They had a 17-year-old in midfield, making, I think, his first appearance since the last game of the previous season against Chelsea again. Miley, I think his name was. Credit to him, though, he actually had a very good game. Yeah. But all 4 goals were avoidable. The first goal is Cucurella at fault. He's just stayed behind, whereas the rest of the defence and the line's kind of gone forward. So Cucurella is playing Isaac onside, and then Isaac just lost it past Sanchez. I thought the one positive from the game was we actually created a fair few chances to the back end of that first half. You look at the Enzo chance, which Pope saved fantastically. Gallagher had a really good chance, and he just needs to kind of improve on that one-on-one finishing, but he just drags it wide. Credit to Sterling, fantastic free kick, probably our goal of the season so far. And
there's not been many.
There hasn't been many, no. And I think I texted you after he scored that, saying I think this is our first free kick since Mount last season at Villa Park. So it's been a long time coming since we kind of scored from a set piece and a free kick. So that was a good finish, and we thought, okay, great, we're back into it. And then we just collapsed second half, absolutely collapsed. I thought it was probably the worst 5 minutes of all of play all season. And all 3 goals, Thiago Silva, experienced defender, but he had a shambolic afternoon at St. James's Park. It does happen. It happens to the best of players, but huge lapse of concentration for the Joel Linton goal. Lascelles' poor marking for that goal. And then the final goal, probably the whole team at fault. But there's one player I wanted to kind of single out for me who had a shambolic performance, even more than Thiago Silva. And that was the man wearing the armband, Reece James. Because for me, he's been given the responsibility to be captain. He's meant to kind of set the precedent of discipline, and to get sent off for those ridiculous yellow cards. The first one for dissent, kicking the ball away after he's given away a foul. And then a couple of minutes later, Sterling does the exact same thing. So clearly there's a lack of discipline in his team if players are kicking the ball away and getting bad. And then a bit later, he loses the ball easily, or he tries to be smart and kicked the ball ahead of Gordon. I think it was Gordon, and then he just paused Gordon down. So 2 yellow cards, and now he's suspended for the game against Brighton on Sunday, and he gave us a bit of a mountain to climb in afterwards. But that was really frustrating. It's the last thing you'd expect from your captain. So I think that really shows that he's still young. He still needs to learn. And perhaps, I know we were both kind of on the fence when he was given the armband in the summer, but it maybe shows that he's not the right player to kind of lead this team and be the captain and show signs of leadership. And set the precedent for discipline, because if he's getting 2 yellow cards for like that, it's not right. I would be very surprised if someone like Frank Lampard, John Terry, even Cesar Azpilicueta did what he did. And those were kind of the captains we've had at the club for the last decade or so. So yeah, really disappointing from him. And it, like I said, probably one of the worst performances I've seen last afternoon in Goodison Park, not Goodison Park, St James's Park.
I wish it was at Goodison Park. We might have got 3 points. I agree with you 100%. I think especially, the comments about Reece James, I think when you're a captain of any club, it doesn't even matter if it's Chelsea or you're a lower league team or you're playing Sunday league team, you're the captain for the reason. The reason to put you as captain is to show the responsibility, show a bit of maturity, show a bit of leadership. And that's one thing that you said before on here. I've said before that there isn't many leaders in the team. You look at maybe Thiago Silva, you look at Raheem Sterling as the older players in the team. But I feel like Reece James, I know he's still relatively young, but you have to throw him in that experienced group of players because he's played at the very top. He's played at the Champions League level. He's played in the international level. So I don't put him as a Madueke or a Conor Gallagher. I don't see him as that sort of level. Maybe age group, yeah, probably. But in terms of his experience and where he's been and the level that he's played at, it's just petulant. You don't, if you're going to kick the ball away, fair enough, but don't get another booking. Sterling as well. I mean, it's just petulant stupidity. And, I watched the game and it was only afterwards I realised Maurizio Pochettino wasn't on the touchline. He was in the stands. And I thought, is this an issue that isn't just on the pitch? Is it... Because I don't remember his 3 yellow cards that Maurizio Pochettino got for him to be banned. I don't remember them, so I'm assuming one would have been probably when he came on the pitch and had to go to the ref after the I think it was the
Anthony
City
Taylor.
game. Was it Anthony Taylor?
Yeah.
The City game. So maybe it was one of those, but I don't really remember that. But it just shows that there's lack of leadership at the top in terms of disciplinary leadership, I should say, or lack of disciplinary. So that's a worry for me. I also thought Nicolas Jackson was poor. I'm going to be honest. I thought he was poor against Newcastle. I think as a striker, and I know he's raw, I know he's young, he's coming into a new league, he needs a bit of time to gel and all the rest of it. I fully appreciate that. But some of the basic things that he can't do as a striker and can't get the ball out of his feet and, take the shot on. And I think I mentioned it on Monday. There was a beautiful 1-2 with Sterling and Jackson. And most strikers take that half volley on. They just take it as first. They don't take a touch. Just take a chance because it could actually go in the back of the net. It might go into row Z, but at least, give yourself the opportunity to take the chance. And he never done that. And I think that for me is a worry. We're scoring goals. I think I mentioned it, I think we scored 9 goals in our last 3 games or something, but we've also conceded about 10. So, or maybe vice versa. I can't remember which way around it is, but it just goes to show that, we can score goals, but look at our defence as well. That's poor. It's poor to, I know it's City and the 1 goal against Tottenham, but 4 against Newcastle. It shows the level of where we are, in my opinion. I think it just shows where we are as a club. And I think I said this last season, the reality is that we are we're playing like a mid-table team. We can't be in that European elite conversation at the moment. Yeah. Which is a shame, but we're just not there. We're so far away from it that we have to be honest with ourselves. We've got a really good manager. We've got a really good crop of players, but it is going to take time. And I think that's the thing that we have to understand. It's going to take time for these players to gel. The manager's get his ideas onto the pitch, but it's looking very scary at the moment in terms of what is that identity? What is that belief? What are we trying to do? Do you see that there's a problem with Maurizio Pochettino maybe trying to get his point across, get his view, get his vision, get his ways of playing across to the players? You think that's now a concern for the club?
I think we've got the 3rd youngest squad in the Premier League behind Burnley and Arsenal, if I'm not mistaken. So this squad is constantly learning, it's constantly growing, it's constantly developing. I think Pochettino is the right manager to get the best out of this team. He works really well with young players, brings youth into the team really well, like he did at Tottenham. And he's had since day one of the season to work with this team. Sure, there has been some big injuries, sort of Lavia, likes of Nkunku, Bajashila, when he made his first Premier League appearance on the weekend. So he had a full team to work with. But it's the period where you want to start seeing results. And I don't think it's fully down to Pochettino. I think that, like I mentioned, the discipline issue, back to Reece James. I mentioned it on the previous episode, he got a red card with England. And actually a bit more research after the recording on how that red card happened. It happened after full time. He was shown a red card, I think, for going up to the ref and probably saying something to his face. So he needs to work on his attitude, his discipline. I know I don't know what's happening with him off the pitch, and he sort of put in that Madrid category. He put a lot of those Instagram kind of cryptic stories and messages. So you don't know what's happening in his personal life. But on the pitch, he needs to kind of take the pressure. He needs to be there. He needs to back out all this bad talking the referee or bad mouthing the ref, and especially when he's got the armband. But yeah, Pochettino now, he really needs to walk with this. I think the injury list that was often been so long and lengthy is now shorter. And all those players on that list wouldn't have featured this season anyway, the likes of Baba. I think it was a given he missed a large chunk of the season. But Nkunku, Lavia back in training now. Those are players that hopefully can make a difference, because starting Ugo Chukwu on his head from internal duty, I think being Lavia in much more Premier League experienced player, given his season was at Southampton, that would have been a blessing for us. But yeah, I think now it's time we need to look at, come on, it's time you get your ideas across this team. It's time you start to discipline this team as well. And it's time as well you start to see results. I know Arsenal, like I said, second a young team as well. They've had a couple of seasons of transition under Arteta, so I do think it's going to be a lengthy process. But at the same time, Chelsea fans are just so patient, and I'm not one of those impatient fans accepting that we're in the table team. Also want to see, like I said, under the Potter regime, I want to see signs that we're progressing, signs that we've actually were on the right track. I have seen it season compared to last season, but it hasn't been on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think it has been difficult, I think, because like I said, we've got a really good team, and it's just worrying for me, I think, as a fan, to see how far and how quick we've gone down to this sort of slippery slope of being a mid-table team or playing like a mid-table team. But the amount of money we've spent, and I've said this before, you said it before, the amount of money we've spent, and we still need to add to the team. To me, that's a massive issue. Recruitment has been a mess. When you look back on it, maybe not so now, but I think when we look back on it in maybe 2 or 3 years, and we think about some of the money that because we've got a good group of youngsters coming through and they're out on loan, Andre Santos and some of the other players that are going to be recalled, hopefully go out on other loan deals in January. But when we look back, not all of those players are going to make it into the Chelsea squad. That's just a given. There's not enough space for all of those players to get into that team. So we might look back and say, well, we spent 20 million on this player or 30, 40 million on that player. We could have just maybe gone and got 6 or 7 actual decent players that could play now in this team and do the job that we need them to do now. Caicedo would have been one for me. A striker would have been one. The goalkeeper situation. Maybe had we not spread that £1 billion across so many different players and maybe just go and get 2 or 3 this season, build and get another 2 or 3 next season, we'd probably be in a better place now. And I just think, maybe looking back on hindsight, this is the issue for me. The recruitment is the problem, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I often said it on the podcast, I much favour finding an experienced player who can come and fit in and perform, rather than these young players that need at least 2-3 years to kind of get used to the league, go and learn for a season. And like you said, it seems that we spread that billion that we spent on lots of young players. Raw and the of them actually had a big impact on the squad yet. So yeah, that might be an issue of the recruitment and kind of transfer policy or the transfer strategy we've implemented under the BONJOUR regime.
Yeah, I agree. I want to talk about Thiago Silva, who there was news that came out earlier on this week that he's potentially looking at extending his current deal, which I think ends this summer, for another year at Chelsea. Now, I have been very critical of Thiago Silva and still will be, but for the simple fact that I think he should not be being played as a week in, week out centre-back at Chelsea. I think he should be the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, certain league games, especially this season. He should be kept back, maybe for the bigger games, actually, maybe for your Man Cities and your Uniteds and Liverpools. Bring him in for those. But what's your thoughts on Thiago Silva? Because I feel he's still obviously a really good centre-back on his day. We know that. But, you know, talking about a 40-year-old centre-back, not to be ageist, but a 40-year-old centre-back in the Premier League, playing at still one of the most good clubs in English football. Is it time? Is he going to be staying for another year to maybe take away an opportunity from a Wesley Fofana or from a Badia Shil or Dasazi? You know, if we do for somehow get into European football next season, there's obviously going to be a lot more football. But if we don't, and we're still playing one game a week, you know, is he taking away an opportunity for one of those centre-backs that we brought in relatively recently, an opportunity away from them?
Yeah, so I think on Sunday he became the oldest outfield player to ever play for Chelsea, or was it in the Premier League as a whole? So it's clearly unheard of to have a player of his age still regularly featuring in the first team. That being said, I still think he's a quality player. He brings so much experience and leadership. Sure, he had a bit of a messy afternoon in Tyneside on Sunday, but I still think he's quality. But I also agree with what we've been saying for the last year or so. It's time we slowly phase him out of the team and we don't feature him as regularly as every single week and every single match day. And I think we have done that sometimes this campaign. There's times we played a Cole and Disasi, or I'm sure when Fofana's back, it will give us more options in, and now that Badiashile is back, it will give us more options in defence to be able to rotate him out more often. That being said, I think he's still kind of unsure about his future. I think he planned on retiring back in Brazil with his boyhood club, which I believe is Fluminense. I need to double check that. But also both his kids are in the Chelsea academy at the moment, and they seem to be doing quite well there. And he seems to love to watch them play, and it seems like Chelsea's part of his routine. He posts on Instagram a lot. He's at Cobham on weekends watching his kids play in the academy. So part of him might also want to stay and maybe accept more of a sporadic role, if it means that his kids can continue to live in the area and play at Chelsea. And I also saw something about potentially discussing a coaching job at Chelsea, which in retiring from professional football. So I think there's a lot of question marks about his future. I'm still very on the fence about giving him another year. I feel like every kind of Christmas we have the same discussion. Should we give him another contract?
But every year he gets older.
Every year he gets older, yeah. Slowly the signs of him kind of not performing to that level or there, but he's still performing at a very high level. I think maybe if we don't get Champions League next year, it means less game time as well, which would mean if Fofana stays fit, it'll mean less game time for him as well. So there's a lot of question marks, but I'm very 50-50 on this one. I love Silva. I think since watching Chelsea all my life, he's been one of my favourite players to watch. I just love his passion and his energy and his love for the club as well, which is not what we've seen recently at Chelsea. We've seen a lot of players that haven't really played for the badge, but he's one of the very few, I feel, in the last maybe 3 or 4 years that's really showed a lot of love and passion for the Chelsea badge, and that's what I love to see.
I don't want him to sign a new deal because and the reason I don't is because I want him to go out gracefully, and I mean that respectfully. Well, I want him to go out gracefully at the top as a top defender. I don't want to watch him as a, like we did against Newcastle, making those little small mistakes, because they suddenly build up, and then you'll see more and more of those mistakes coming from him. And I don't want people to remember that last season of Thiago Silva, where he's almost like a boxer. You don't want a boxer to go in the ring and get knocked out, and he's been one of the world best heavyweights of the world, for many years. You don't want him to see, go out gracefully at the top. And I think this would be a perfect time. It's a shame that he's not going away with a, if this is his last season, he's not going to go away with a trophy or something just to, icing on the cake. But I'd love him as a coaching role. I think, one of the points you made, he does love that London life. His kids are now in the academy as well. So I'd love him to be in the coaching capacity, because I think maybe not even for the first team, look at the development squad, you look at the under 18s, and, it'd be a perfect opportunity, not to say he's not doing this, but to start his badges and maybe look at doing something along those lines. I just think we've got enough centre-backs now, even without Trevor Chalobah being in the frame, Dizazi, Colwell, Badiashile. we've got them there. So I just think, for me,
Humphreys as well is out on loan.
Yeah,
really well in pre-season.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got players that we now need to. If we're trying to do this whole, youthful, bring in the youngsters, the new project or whatever you want to call it, I can't see him being a part of that, because I think as much as he brings quality and he's going to be he goes down as world class. He has to. Mm-hmm. As much as he brings all of that, I think we now need to inject the new lease of players into that team and give them the opportunity. And they are going to make mistakes, and they are going to, we are going to wish we had Silva back in the team. But we have to remember he's 40 years of age. I'm nearly 40, and I know what it feels like with my knees when I walk up and down the stairs. So I can only imagine for someone who keeps their body in good nick in terms of Thiago Silva, it must still take its toll on you. We've seen him in like those ice things where I don't know what the actual term for them is, but those sort of recovery bags that they sort of sleep in, or they lie in for a couple of hours afterwards. So you can tell that the recuperation is obviously a lot more intense for someone like Thiago Silva. I just think coaching, for me, with the next role, give someone else an opportunity in our team to go forward.
Yeah, what I will say though is, if we do get rid of Thiago Silva, I want us to bring in another experienced player.
Oh yeah.
And when I say experience, it has to be like over the age of 26, 27, who's played in the league, who's played across Europe. Because if we get rid of Thiago Silva, you're looking at maybe Raheem Sterling as your most experienced player in the team. And that for me is worrying, really, really worrying. Whereas all the other teams have had a player like a Bernardo Silva who's been there for 5-6 years. Arsenal even potentially have, maybe that's not the best example, but even Odegaard, I'd consider him experienced.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
4 years.
Yep.
Liverpool have the likes of Salah, they have Thiago Alcantara, have Van Dijk, exactly, Alisson even now. Yeah. And I think that's what we really lack right now, is experienced players who are also leaders in the team. And you take away Silva, and we don't have that anymore. And I gave you an example of Reece James isn't what we thought he'd be as the leader.
Yeah.
You're looking at maybe Sterling, Chilwell, Robert Sanchez, even, and they're not exactly the leaders you want to turn to. So yeah, I think we need to bring in some experienced players. Should we get rid of Silva?
Yeah, it's a good debate. It's a good conversation. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on the social accounts as well, what you think about Thiago Silva. Now, I'm on the fence with this next topic as well, because it was announced earlier on this week that the FA, the Football Association Board, IFAB, has decided they want to introduce a 10-minute sin bin for cynical fouls and dissent. Now, they're going to trial that in a professional game. This is something that I think has been ongoing and has been used at grassroots since 2019, but it's now stepping over into the professional game of football, where there'll be 10-minute sin bins for what they call cynical fouls. Define that as you want. But what is your thoughts on that? Because it feels like this is the orange card that many people have sort of spoken about for many years. It's not a red, but it's not a yellow, but it could be an orange card. This kind of feels like this is going into that category of ice hockey. I don't know if they do it in NBA. I don't think they do they?
I'm not sure. I know I saw at the Rugby World Cup.
Yes, they do in rugby as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it might be NBA. Yeah,
I think it's NBA. I might have got that wrong. But this feels very Americanized, this whole idea of sin bins coming into football in England. But are you for or against the sin binning of players?
I think I'm against it. I feel don't change a format or rules or regulations that work. And for me, if, like we saw with Reece James, you kick the ball away, in the rule book, that's a yellow card.
Yep.
And if you get 2 yellow cards, then you're sent off. And if you're sent off, you go to the dressing room, you come back on to the pitch, and your team is penalised as a result and play of 10 men for the remainder of the game. I know maybe different sports work differently because you need the exact number of players on the pitch. And I think in rugby, if you get a yellow card or even maybe a red, I remember seeing at the Rugby World Cup back in October, a little timer goes up in the top hand corner of the screen, like a countdown in a way, and shows how long the player has before they're able to come back on the pitch. And it all feels very Americanized as well. This whole concept of sin bin feels like you're going to punish the player. Your team's going to be penalized for 10, 15 minutes, whatever time it is, and then he's allowed to come back on. But for me, if you get sent off, you get sent off. You go, you have an early shower, you have an early bath, but you don't come back on the pitch. Maybe I'm play devil's advocate for the sport. It could be quite entertaining. You might have 10 minutes of absolute chaos where one team is able to get back into the game while that player is off the pitch. It might be a bit of a tactical nightmare for managers who have to deal with that player being on the bench or the sin bin, whatever you want to call it, for 10 minutes and have to change his formation for the time being. But but it also could allow some real kind of shambles and defensive collapses. So I'm not for it at all. I feel like there should be a yellow card and a red card, none of this orange card or none of this sin bin story. I think John Terry put a tweet up and he was very against the idea as well. So if you have big kind of experienced players in football or faces in football against the idea, I think that says it already.
Yeah. My worry for sin bins is we already have a lot of inconsistencies in football. You look at VAR, for instance, there's some refs or some fourth officials or VAR assistants, whatever you want to call them, that are giving decisions for one offside, and then next weekend it's not an offside or it is an offside. So there's so many inconsistencies already. Why add another layer of inconsistencies to the game already, which I feel personally is just crazy to me, because I think have the referee on the pitch make the decision correctly, we wouldn't even need sin bins, because if it's a yellow card, it's a yellow card. If it's a red card, it's a red card. I think that those two things for me are black and white almost, just one is one and the other is the other. There shouldn't need to be a middle ground of sin bins for cynical fouls. If you think it's a cynical foul, then give a yellow card. If you don't think it's a cynical foul, just let the game carry on. I think, to me, that's as basic as the rule should be. I don't think we should be sin binning players as well. Yeah, I'm dead against it, actually. I just don't think it's required. And almost makes a mockery of the current dissent yellow cards rule that they brought in, if they have to bring in something else to eradicate that. Because if they're saying that the yellow card, for kicking the ball away or for talking to the referee or whatever is deemed a cynical foul, so we're now going to sin bin you, then, Reece James just got sent off last weekend for kicking the ball away. So would he have been sin binned for that? If that's the case, then let's get away with this from now. Why are we still giving yellow cards for kicking the ball away? It's just, and even Sterling's, I didn't really agree with Sterling's. Yeah, I know he kicked the ball away. I wouldn't say he kicked it in disapproval of the referee's decision. I think it was just one of those that all footballers done. I've done it myself. You just get the ball, you roll it away a little bit. It's not like it's intentional, I don't think, but
yeah,
it's a
what frustrated me the most is, I think I was on the Sunday, I was watching, I can't remember if it was the Tottenham or the United game, but a player did the exact same thing. I think it might have been
got away with it.
Kicked the ball away.
It was got away with it. It was Garnacho.
It was Garnacho, yeah.
It was, because I think,
and I literally remember just pointing at the TV. It was like that Leonardo DiCaprio.
And he'd done it on purpose. He'd done it on purpose. He kicked the ball away, and I can't remember who it was. Well, it was a couple of the other. Was it Everton? They were playing Everton, weren't they? I think United.
Everton, yeah.
And the Everton players went over to the ref and said, "Look, he's just kicked the ball away. You're not going to book him." And the ref done nothing. So it just shows that there's levels of inconsistency already in todaying game without the sin bin. So someone that might, and then you've got to think about, imagine Anthony Taylor sin bin, and I don't know, trying to think. We've got a world-class striker. I'm not going to use Nicolas Jackson, but we've got a world-class striker. He sin bins the world-class striker for 10 minutes. There's 10 minutes to go in the game. We're playing Man City. We're winning 2-1, and then suddenly someone else scores. It just takes away. It just makes the game unbalanced for me. I don't agree with it at all. I don't agree with it.
Yeah, we're seeing something. Not it's not quite the sin bin, but we're seeing something similar when a player is injured and has to be taken off the pitch and then is not allowed back onto the pitch for a couple of minutes or so, and then our team is technically penalised for an injury. I know it's to prevent players faking injuries. I think that's the reasoning behind not letting them back on quickly. But that's technically like a 2-3 minute sin bin at the moment.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of players, as a result, they have to kind of shift formations. I think one of the midfielders drops in defence at times. And more often than not, they end up defending a corner with 10 men or something like that. So it makes it a lot trickier for those teams. But I think, like you, I'm completely against the idea.
Yeah. Let's hope it doesn't come in fully. I think it will. If they're piloting things, they normally bring it in, 2 or 3 seasons down the road. So let's hope there's a change at the top at the FA, the governing board, who've decided to do this. Now, Mauricio Pochettino is currently having his press conferences as we're recording. So there's going to be things, hopefully, that I'll be able to share with you guys as we record in the next segment of the podcast. But let's talk about Christopher Nkunku, a player that has got the weight of the world on his shoulders already. He hasn't kicked a ball for us competitively in the league, but I do feel a lot of pressure has been put on the shoulders of Nkunku to deliver on the pitch whenever he's back. He's now back in full team training, but a couple of questions. The first one being, obviously he's now back in training. Would you expect to see him on the bench at least for Brighton? And also, our motto seems to be, if you're on the bench, you're fit enough to play the game. So would you start him or would you keep him? With Nkunku, I feel it's slightly different, but would you keep him on the bench to bring him on?
I think given how long he's been injured, you can't just throw him back into the team straight away. I know that we always say if you're on the bench, you can start.
Yeah.
But I expect him to be, if he's on the bench, to feature in that game. Whether that's against Brighton or United, I'm not sure which game it will be, because we have 2 games in the space of 3-4 days. But I think in one of those 2 games, he will feature on the bench and he will come off the bench. And I think that's the best way to kind of give him a couple, maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And then if that happens against Brighton and he gets the game time, there's a chance he starts the United game. And then I think it's Everton we have the following weekend. So if he comes off the bench against United, I'd expect him to start at Goodison Park. But yeah, 3 games in the next 7 days or so. So I'd expect him to at least feature in 2 of those 3 games.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think it's I think we have to manage him properly. I think because it's so crucial to what we're trying to do going forward as well. And I think Cole Palmer's taken a lot of the heat, I suppose, from Saul not being able to do that going forward. He's obviously been the one in the attack alongside Raheem Sterling that's played really well. But I do think that I think he'll be on the bench for the Brighton game. I'd also think he'd be on the bench for the way that's, I think, from how Mauricio Pochettino seems to do with injuries and players coming back, he likes to give them as much time on the bench as possible and then phase them into that team very slowly, which is fine, provided that we're winning games. But I think because of where we are in terms of the season, the league, the game, the results, I would possibly give him 15, maybe 10 minutes against Brighton. I would then probably up that hopefully to 30 minutes, maybe, the best part of the second half against United. And then, as you say, Everton, possible start, or at least, a good 45 minutes, again, another 30-minute chunk of football against Everton as well. So, but I'm not expecting much from him. I know it sounds weird. I don't want to see pressure added to a player that's just come back from a massive... You've got to remember, he was injured at the summer series. He's missed a massive chunk of football. And training is one thing, but being in a competitive match is so different to, training with your teammates. I think he has to be ready. We got to see, I think it was Bentancur for Spurs, who came back from a massive ACL injury. And then I think, Monday or whenever it was, I can't remember when the game was now, another injury is setting back 2 months again. So it's happening to players a lot more where their, impact injuries are massive. So I don't want to rush him. I'm not expecting those from him. If I'm honest, I want to see Nicolas Jackson perform more than anyone against Brighton. I think he owes that to the fans, to the club. I'm not saying he doesn't have a private life and he can't do what he wants when he's got a day off, but I wasn't happy with that Villareal video, him in the dressing room. It just didn't sit right with me. I just think, we lost 4-1. I think if this was a Frank Lampard or a John Terry or someone of that, even Didier Drogba or someone like that, I think they'd be on the training pitch, regardless of whether, training's cancelled. I think they'd find a pitch somewhere and they'd be doing shooting drills, because the reason we lost is because you didn't take your chances. So, I don't know. Going back to Nkunku slightly, but I'd love to see him get some game time. I just don't know whether Pochettino is going to risk that at the moment.
Yeah, I think your kind of 3-game and a kind of minute distribution makes sense for me. We have to remember he hasn't kicked a ball for Chelsea professionally yet, and he hasn't featured since that pre-season game against Borussia Dortmund, which was at the very beginning of August. And we've seen from last season and even this season, rushing players back from injuries always backfires for us with Ben Chilwell, Reece James. So the last thing you want to do is get Nkunku back on the pitch and have him injured again. And this guy doesn't have the best of track records of injuries. I think the last 3 or 4 years, he's missed a lot of games for injury. So we need to manage his minutes correctly. And there's a lot of football to play throughout December. We've got to remember that. So I think it makes sense not to rush him back. But I do expect him to be on the bench for at least the game against Brighton or the trip to Old Trafford midweek. And in regards to Nicolas Jackson, I'd have to agree. This guy owes us something. And I think that kind of that discipline that players used to show back in the day of being on the training ground early, staying at training practice their free kicks, their penalties, their shooting drills. That's gone now in the game. You listen to all these podcasts of retired players saying how they just stay behind after hours and practice this, practice that. They wanted to perfect it. Lampard with penalties, Drogba free kicks, whatever it was. And I think now these players just want to go home as soon as the training finishes, probably. They want to go home, play FIFA, be with their families, be with their girlfriends. So that discipline on the training ground is gone. And like you said, I expect Jackson to be almost pushing Pochettino, saying, you know what, I messed up today. I'm going to be on the training ground tomorrow. I'm not going to travel to Villareal, to Spain, to be with my former club. And I think the timing of that was really unfortunate on the back end of a 4-1 defeat to Newcastle, because I know players have done that before. Even players that have left Chelsea have come back. I'm remembering Timo Werner, I believe, was in the stands for, I think, our first game of last season against, I forgot who it was against, but he was there. I remember he was sat in a box in the West Lower. So players do come back to revisit their former team shortly after departing. But the timing of that trip was very unfortunate, especially seeing him smiling with all of his old teammates. It just didn't really sit well with Chelsea fans.
No. And like I said, he's well within his rights. No one tells you what to do. No one tells me what to do, during our spare time. But the problem is we don't play for Chelsea. We didn't get battered 4-1. So I think that's the issue that a lot of fans have. Now, just looking at some of the comments from the press conference that's coming through. So there is one here to say that Christopher Nkunku is a possibility to travel for the game or to be part of the squad for tomorrow. Romeo Lavia potentially isn't. So that kind of goes against what I initially thought, with Lavia being the one that's closer to being back in the squad. But I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing at least some form of Nkunku, whether it's a 10-minute, 15, 30-minute cameo tomorrow. I'm looking forward to just seeing any part of Nkunku and what he can do going forward as well. But let's go into the predictions for the game. Obviously, Brighton, I think I've got a lot of injuries if I recall. They've got maybe 10 injuries.
That's what we said last week, though, so let's not kind of make that same mistake.
True. I'll take that comment back, actually. But
they do have lots of injuries.
They've got a lot of injuries. And we have our fair share still. We've just spoken about Nkunku and Lavia. I think if we look at the full list of injuries, I think I've got it here now. Gusto is out. Trevor Chalobah apparently still injured. Ben Chilwell, Carney Chukwuemeka, Wesley Fofana are also out. So very defensively, you look at those players, obviously take away Nkunku, a lot of our defensive or midfield is currently disjointed still. Brighton's always a tricky game, and it shouldn't be, but it is. What's your thoughts going into that game? What's your expectation? And surely we need to see an impressive bounce back from Newcastle.
Yeah, so I will talk about their injuries because they do have a long list. I believe Lamptey and their loanee from Barcelona, Ansu Fati, both injured for a lengthy period with 5 injuries. Welbeck, a player who always performs against us, injured as well. Always scores, yeah. Lewis Dunk suspended after his red card. I think it was against Forest. Dahoud suspended as well. Estupiñán, the Ecuadorian fullback, injured as well. And there's a few others on that list. They do have lots of injuries. And they did play in Athens last night against AEK Athens in the Europa League. So you'd hope there'd be a bit of fatigue in the squad travelling back to Brighton probably early this morning or late last night. That being said, we have struggled against Brighton, and with recent years, I think 2 draws in the last season, and then I think 3 wins in the previous 3 seasons. It's going to be a tough game. We've beaten them already in the League Cup, so we do have the capability and the capacity to beat them. I think it just really depends on the fire that these players have to bounce back from that poor performance against Newcastle and the desire they want to show to pick up 3 points. Because like I said, these games are going to come thick and fast now in December. And the last thing you want to be doing is dropping points at home to Brighton. And if I'm completely honest, this Brighton's team is not performing as well as they were last season. Mm-hmm. They do look a bit more fragile defensively. And I think maybe the kind of addition of European football midweek has maybe meant they have to rotate more often, has led to injuries and fatigue in the squad. So I think they are beatable. But I'm still not overly confident. If we play anywhere near like we did against Newcastle, we're going to struggle. We're really going to struggle. So we can't allow any lapses in concentration defensively, and we need to be effective and ruthless with our chances. Because the last thing you want is to have this type of Gallagher, Jackson, Enzo chances and not take them, because those were sitters for me. So yeah, I'm expecting a tough game, but I'm also expecting us to bounce back and try to get 3 points.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't think we're going to win. I really don't. And again, not to be the negative one on here, but I just look at our form, and I say this every week now. And some weeks I'm surprised, look at the Tottenham game, albeit with the 9 men, and against City, I was surprised, but I just don't see where the goals come from. You look at Sterling's amazing free kick against Newcastle, but apart from that, yes, we created chances, but was there ever a moment where I thought one of these chances is going to be converted into a goal? Probably not, because you don't have that confidence with Jackson. You don't have that confidence with maybe Raheem Sterling, away from a set piece to take some players on or get a ball into the box to Jackson, or you're hoping Cole Palmer might have a bit of trickery and do something. So I just don't see it. And I think with Brighton, I agree with you. I think they have changed. I think there's more to do with the McAllister and the Caicedo, 2 big signings leaving the club in the summer as well, and not really replacing them with like for likes, so to speak. But they have still got Evan Ferguson, who I love. I think he's a really good player. Adingra, who I like as well. Matoma on there as well. So I think, we could see a midfield of Billy Gilmore coming back to Stamford Bridge actually tomorrow. It wouldn't be surprised if he gets on the score sheet as well.
I did put a tweet up or an Instagram post with all the players that have played for both Brighton and
there's a couple.
Chelsea. There's a lot. Even like the likes of Tomori, Izzy Brown, Lucas Payet played for Chelsea, managed Brighton, Wayne Bridge, Steve Sidwell, Cucurella, Robert Sanchez, Levi Colwill. There's a lot of them on that list. Graham Potter.
You forget how many actually, don't you?
Yeah.
But I just look at Brighton, and it wouldn't surprise me. I know we're at Stamford Bridge. I think I said the game was tomorrow, Sunday, 2 p.m. I look at Brighton and I think they're a team that could just turn up to Stamford Bridge and get 3 points.
That's what they did last season. I think it was Lampard's first home game in charge. And they beat us 2-1. I think I was wrong before I said we drew the last 2 games at home in the league against them. We lost last season and we drew the 2 previously, 1-1 and 0-0 the year before. They are capable of just coming and winning, getting 3 points, and they have done that at times this season. They haven't played amazingly. Like last night, they didn't play amazingly in Greece, but they got 3 points. Al Pedro, another good player that they've got.
Forgot.
It's going to be a tricky game, and we can't take it for granted despite their injuries.
I asked you, I think it was 2 weeks ago, whether, and maybe we can't do that now with the Reece James suspension, but I did ask you whether Pochettino should consider reverting back to a separate formation. This formation doesn't seem to be the 4-2-3-1. Doesn't seem to be working. Maybe that's because Nkunku's not in the team at the moment. Lavia's obviously still got to come back into it. But do you think this is a game where you attempt? I don't think we can do it now with obviously Gusto and James out. But do you attempt to go back to that 3 centre backs with the 2 wing backs? Is that something maybe we look at in this game, or maybe we look at in another game going forward, or do we just stick to what we are trying to implement it, and then hopefully when the players come back, it all fits the pieces to the puzzle?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, Jackson can't score at the moment or struggling up front. Our midfielders, Gallagher, Enzo and Caicedo haven't scored a single goal this season except for Enzo's in the League Cup, which puts all the pressure on Palmer and Sterling to score the goals, and all of Palmer's goals have come from the penalty spots. So I think there's a chance maybe throughout December we trial it again with the wing backs because they do offer a lot of firepower going up the pitch. But we can't do it against Brighton. We don't have either Reece James or Malo Gusto to play right wing back. So I think I'm going to have to write off that formation for Sunday. And Disasi, I think, at right back is going to be the suitable option because you don't really trust him with right wing back. You don't think he's got the legs or the crossing ability. But I think
we don't have Cucurella or Chilwell either.
Is Cucurella suspended, isn't he? 5 yellow cards.
Yep.
So it's going to be probably Colwill left back, Colwill left back, Disasi right back, Silva, Badiashile centre backs.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Or Matson. Forget about Matson. I think it's time we bring Matson in.
I don't think we will.
You're shaking your head.
Look, the only reason is I think if he was going to be part of the team, he would have played some form of football by now. I can't remember how many games he started. I don't think he started a game. I think he came on very early on in the season. He
played a League Cup against Wimbledon and maybe came off the bench against Liverpool at the start of the season.
I think he's going. I think he'll be gone in January, him and Chalobah. But Yeah, I mean, we've sort of blended into our predicted lineup. So we've gone for Dizazi, Silva, Badiashile, and Colwell as left back. Very much the same, probably going forward from there onwards. Do you reckon? I don't know.
Yeah, I think Ugochukwu came in against Newcastle, but I don't think you'd start him back to back. So I'd stick with Caicedo, Enzo, and Gallagher. Mm-hmm. And then what I will say is I'd drop Jackson for Broja on Sunday.
I'd agree.
And have Palmer and Sterling either side of him.
I'd agree. And I'll be honest, when I've seen Amanda Broja come into the team, I just feel there's an opportunity he might score a goal more so than I do with Jackson on the ball. And I don't know if that's just because I've sort of resigned to the fact that Jackson isn't going to score, or he just offers a bit more from, you get a bit more from Broja that he might get the goal. Picks up really good pockets of space in between the defenders as well. So I agree with that. I think he has to have the opportunity. He's had a lot of, like we've just spoken about, Nkunku coming off the bench, getting a bit of minutes, coming off and doing all of that. Broja's been doing that the last couple of games, and I think this would be a perfect game to start him. And I've always said as well, that's not a criticism as such to Jackson. It's just another option off the bench that we need. You know, if Broja, 60, 70 minutes, 80 minutes has felt the full effects of a game, playing that many minutes in one part of the game. Take him off, bring on Jackson for the last 10 like we do with Broja. Give the defenders something else to think about as well. So, I'm definitely, I don't want to see Nicolas Jackson for the next 7 days. I don't want to see him against United. I don't want to see him against Everton. I want to give Broja a good run of games, consistency in that team, understanding how Palmer and Sterling play, linking up with them, hopefully Enzo feeding a lovely ball into him, something like that. I just want to see some more creativity being converted into goals, I think is the next step for us now.
Yeah, and I think Broja was on that list of players that might want to consider his future in January, given the lack of game time he's had. But Pochettino, I think, wants to give him more consistent game time before making a decision in January. And I believe Fulham are one of the clubs that are really interested in him. And they haven't really replaced Mitrovic since he's left. And I was at the game on Monday against Wolves at Craven Cottage. And I'll tell you what, their fans are so critical of Raul Jimenez.
Oh, really? To be expected. To be expected.
Yeah.
To be expected.
Yeah, I don't think he's performed to the levels that they expected this season. I think he might only have one goal.
He's got one goal. Yeah.
One goal. So they might look for a new number 9 in January. And Broja, whether it's a loan, whether it's a permanent move. But I think we need to keep him. I think Nkunku likely to get injured again. We're still unsure if he'll play as a number 9 behind the striker, on the side of the striker. So, for me, I want to give Broja a run of games and see what he's worth.
Yeah, you're forgetting about the guy in Italy at the moment who might return.
No, we don't mumble his name anymore.
Yeah, he's not returning. I agree with you. I think Broja has a lot to offer in this team, more so next season, and I think we'd be so stupid to get rid of him. So I'd start him. I'd start him for the next couple of games. Give him that consistency, that run of football, and see what he can do. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? He doesn't score goals. Well, the same thing's happening with Nicolas Jackson at the moment. So what are we losing? Well, we might gain rather than lose. So for me, it's a no-brainer. So I think we've kind of got our team pretty much. Sanchez in goal, Dizazi, Silva, Badiashile, Colwell, Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, Conor Gallagher, Raheem Sterling, and Amanda Broja up front. I think that's the team. As we always do, let's wrap up with the predictions, the scoreline. I don't think anyone's been right, or if we have, it's been very few and far between this season. So what are we going for Brighton, Sunday, 2 p.m?
I'll be watching this one, recovering from my marathon with my legs probably with some ice packs all over them, and my first pint that I've had in a month or so. But yeah, I'm going to go with 1-1. I think we'll all drop points. I think we'll concede from a set piece, but maybe a Sterling or a Palmer will pop up with a goal.
Optimistic. I'm not as optimistic as Theo at the moment. I'm going to go, I think we're going to get thrashed again. I think this could be a 3-0 drumming, maybe 3-1. I look at our right back, left back, makeshifts, and I think about Matoma. I think about Adingra. As I said, really like him, very good player coming through. He'll probably play on the right side, Matoma on the left. Nightmares for Colwell, nightmare for Dizazi as well. I just worry about those two and then Silva playing centre-back with Badiashile kind of worries me a lot. And Sanchez, who somehow has managed to escape any criticism on the podcast this week, but with Sanchez in goal as well, I do worry about that back line and the goalkeeper.
This is one for another podcast, but I feel like the criticism for Sanchez is undeserved. But
yeah, we'll save that for next week then. Because
we'll save it for next week. Yeah.
So would you not replace him? Just very quickly, would you not bring in a goalkeeper and there's not many, so I'm not saying who, but do you think if he was in the Champions League, would you trust him in goal?
Would we have conceded the same goals we conceded this season with Kepa? Yes. And I think we would have conceded anything.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think it's like the lesser of two evils. I think at the moment with Sanchez, I think
there's a few. There's a list of goalkeepers that I've drafted that I think could do a good job at Chelsea, but I want to give Sanchez the full season before judging him. And I also think he's pulled off some unreal saves at times.
He has. He's also
against Haaland.
He's also let some really bad goals in as well.
Just the one against Arsenal, if we're honest.
I'm going to make a reel of him, what they call a compilation. I'm going to bring it for the podcast.
There's a few reels of a United goalkeeper going around at the moment that we were linked to.
Yeah, we definitely I think we dodged a bullet because we were linked with
dodged a big bullet with that one, yeah. And I'm happily sharing those reels with all my United friends.
Just quickly though as well. So Petrovic, another player that hasn't really featured. As we just spoke about Nicolas Jackson and Armando Broja, is this maybe the wrong question for you, but for Chelsea fans, I think this could be an opportunity for us to play him as well and see what he can do.
I would have given him the Wimbledon and the Blackburn games.
The
League Cups, he didn't play those. And if he doesn't play those, obviously you play usually your number one in the Prem games. And that leaves us maybe with the FA Cup game, start of January, whoever we draw. But if we draw a City or Liverpool, Poch might think, shoot, this is my only chance of winning silverware. I'm going to play my number one. So you do wonder, when does he play? Maybe Poch sees something on the training ground that we don't, and that's maybe
true.
Sanchez performing better than Petrovic. But I'd give Petrovic a chance. We clearly brought this guy in for a reason. He was pretty good in the MLS. We got Slanina out from the MLS as well. So this league does produce good goalkeepers. But yeah, you just do wonder when his chance is going to come. But I feel we could have a whole segment on goalkeepers in an upcoming episode.
Yeah, definitely. We'll come back to this next week, I think. But for anyone who's listening, make sure you go and give your predictions in the comments if you're on YouTube, or head over to the social accounts and interact over there with us as well. Make sure you hit the Linktree link in the description. That takes you to all the previous episodes. And as I said, all the social accounts and all the information will be on there as well. Make sure you subscribe, give this video a like as well. Don't forget to do all of those things before you leave. Theo, as always, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. I always say it's a pleasure, and then we get to Monday morning and we're fuming. So I don't know, is it a pleasure? I'm not sure.
It's a pleasure for now. Yeah,
it's a pleasure for now. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode. Hope everyone enjoys their weekend when you get to it. Thanks for watching.